and I love to talk about attitude. Kind of my theory on that is no one can be positive 100% of the time. It's not possible. Bad stuff happens. And it's okay to have one of those days. But one of those days, if you don't check your attitude and think about it, one of those days quickly turns into two of those days, and two become three. And we all know people who've had like 7 years in a row worth of one of those days.
Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Pay It Forward podcast. I am one of your hosts, Austin Sewart, along with my co-host, Keegan Walls. And today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Matt Booth. Matt is an attitude expert. He is a certified speaking professional, an author, an entrepreneur. I had the pleasure of having Matt speak at our Leading with Power men's group here in La Crosse this year, also in years past. Awesome dude, awesome story, energetic, awesome speaker. So thanks for taking the time to be with us, Matt. Excited to talk a little bit about life as a public speaker. People in general hate public speaking, right? And you made a career out of it. So thanks for taking the time to be with us here.
Yeah, which I'm glad people don't like it or think of all the competition. There's enough other speakers already. If everyone was able to do it, there'd be so much competition, and maybe you and I wouldn't even be talking right now.
Yeah, certainly. Very cool. So I know a little bit about what you're doing now, but for those that don't, share with us a little bit kind of what your day-to-day and what you're up to.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm a husband and a dad. Joey and I have been married for 15 years now. My wife, if you get this, she's a professional musician. She's always been a rock singer. She's like an actual rock star in our area in Dubuque. And when COVID hit, she, no one wanted a rock band where they can have 300 or 400 or 500 people in a room. And everybody started asking her if she, could bring an acoustic guitar or bring a guitar player and sing in their backyard or at a golf course or a winery or something outdoors. And so she had a number of people who would play with her. But she found out that was kind of difficult too. So during COVID, she freaking learned to play guitar. She taught herself guitar, and then she learned like a half hour of music, and then she did a cocktail hour. And now she's full blown. She sings, she writes some songs, she plays guitar. She probably does 100 shows a year. And she's transitioned, took advantage of COVID and learned to play guitar. And of course, she's a great mom, but so she works a couple times a week. She does corporate gigs. She does a lot of wineries, bars, places like that. She also does some entertaining at, nursing homes, which is really cool. They have budgets. And I even told her at the beginning, if you go to the Alzheimer's unit, you could just play the same 2 songs for 3 hours. Yeah. It's horrible, isn't it? But when you're an entrepreneur, you have to do what you can. Yes, and so we have 2 kids. They're 14 and 12, 2 boys. They're awesome. They're musical. They're both little athletes, and they kind of have weird parents, so they're kind of cool little dudes. Yeah, for sure. And then this is what I do for 25 years now. I've been a professional speaker. I joined the National Speakers Association in 2003. That's when I had my LLC and my business. And for the past 25 years, I've been traveling around the world, our country, and around the world. I've worked in all 50 states and hit 6 out of 7 continents, still looking to get to Antarctica to speak. And for the past 25 years, if there's one thing I like to do almost as much as talking, which I love to talk, it's listening to other speakers and listening to other leaders and podcasts like yours and, of course, Joe Rogan. But listening, I love to do that. And I've had the opportunity because of my job to listen to thousands of other speakers at conferences around the world. And for the past 25 years, I've heard so many people say, you need to think outside of the box. And we've been thinking outside of the box so much many of us have forgotten the basics inside the box, which is why I wrote my third book, Basically Incredible, which essentially means in this crazy world of 21-day fixes, Amazon Prime, AI. I mean, there's so many distractions in this world that many of us have forgotten, never knew in the first place, uh, forgot or never knew in the first place, the basics inside the box. And it's those basics, if you do them consistently, lead to incredible relationships, incredible businesses, and an incredible life. And so that's what I do. So I travel around about 50 times a year, once a week ish, sometimes more, sometimes less. During COVID, not at all. And give a speech. And it would be very much like the Leading with Power one. I come up the night before, speak in the morning or speak at lunch, and then head to the next program or head home.
So how did this all come about? When did you decide this is what I want to do with my life?
Yeah, great question. So when I was 16 years old, I went to my first high school dance. And that was back in the 80s, and it was an air guitar. And neither one of you two probably remember air guitar, but you know what I'm saying, where you lip sync the song. So I went to this dance, and it was awesome. And I got home that night at 11 o'clock, and I woke my dad up, and I said, Dad, I know what I want to do the rest of my life. He's like, what? You're 16. What do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a DJ. And he's like, well, what do you mean? Like a DJ? I said, well, I want to play music and I want to, it'd be awesome. He goes, what do you need to have? What kind of music or what kind of equipment? And I didn't have any of those answers. And he said, let's talk about it in the morning. So I went to sleep, could hardly sleep. The next day, I got up earlier than I'd ever got up on my own. And I went and woke my dad up again and said, Dad, I want to be a DJ. So we wrote down this whole list of questions like, what kind of equipment? How am I going to get, performances or gigs? Just all these questions that my entrepreneur dad asked me. And I had no answers, to any of them. And he said, why don't you go work for another company? So I called up this DJ company and said, hey, I want to be a DJ. And they kind of laughed and said, we're having a meeting this afternoon. Why don't you come over and we'll interview you? So I got all dressed up and put on a little skinny black knit tie. And I went to the interview. And of course, they hired me. And I started being a DJ. And I always went with this guy named Scott to weddings. And for 4 months, all I did was wrap up cords and carry speakers and run the lights and take requests. And all I really wanted to do, right, was to be the real DJ, to talk on the mic and pick the songs. And it was records that we used to interact with the crowd. But I never got to because I was the assistant DJ. I showed up at the warehouse where we loaded up the bands one night. And Scott was always there and ready to go. And that night he wasn't there. And we started loading the band. And I said, where's Scott? He's the DJ. He's the real DJ. And they said, well, Scott's grandma passed away and he can't make it. And I said, okay, who else are you going to send with me? Like, who's going to be the real DJ? And he said, everyone else is busy. You're going to have to do it. So I was 16 years old, loaded up this huge old cargo van with all these big speakers and lights and milk crates full of records. And I drove an hour and a half to this big fairgrounds and set everything up and went into this, and everything worked, thankfully, because I didn't know how to fix anything. And I went into this crappy fairgrounds bathroom and changed into my little tuck shirt and cummerbund and tie. And I was 16 years old, short, pimples on my face. And I came out and I walked up to the bride and groom and I said to the bride, hey, my name is Matt Booth with Mobile Music Machine. I'm going to be your DJ for the night. She smiled and shook my hand. And then I turned to the groom and I said, my name is Matt Booth. I'm going to be your DJ tonight. And he looked around the room. He looked all over. He goes, where's the real effing DJ? Guys, there was like 500 people in this fairgrounds.
Dang.
And I said to him, sir, I'm all you've got. This is it. And it was kind of a sink or swim moment for me. And I did it. There was no choice. We didn't have any choice. And I would love to tell you that I crushed it that night and killed it. But that would be a lie. And I did okay. It was fine. It wasn't great. I didn't crush it, but we had a great time and made a memorable reception. A couple years later, I know this is a long story, Keegan, for your answer. A couple years later, I bought my own equipment and I was DJing a wedding, and it was great. And by then, I'll tell you, I was crushing it because I had the experience. I knew what to do. The father of the bride, after the wedding, he came up to me. He said, "Matt, you're awesome. This was so much fun. You're so good on the microphone." And I'm thinking I'm going to get like a $20 tip from him or something. He's like, "You were so cool and you're so good on the microphone." He said, "Will you come speak to my class of eighth graders?" What would you like me to talk about? I was 19 years old. And of course, he'd been drinking, right? He goes, "I don't really give a crap what you talk about. I'll see you Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock."
There you go.
And that's how it happened. So I was 19 and I went and spoke to the class of eighth graders. I wasn't that much older than them. I talked about the DJ business. I've always had kind of a passion for attitude because since I was little, my dad was in the insurance business. I mean, he always used to listen to these motivational tapes by Zig Ziglar, Dale Carnegie, and all this stuff. So I always kind of had a flair for that and the feel for attitude and the upbringing I had. You know, you always learn. They say you always learn about what you need the most. So talking about attitude always seemed natural to me. From that day on, for the first 10 years of my speaking career, I did about 500 speaking programs. I never got paid a dime. I didn't even know you could get paid. I would travel and drive somewhere and pay for my own gas and stay in a hotel if I had to. We were talking about this a little bit before, like an overnight success, you know, which there's really not too much of that once in a while. But I put in 10 years from 19 till I was almost 30. And then I got some advice and thought it would be cool if I could get paid to go do something that I love to do for free. I mean, that was the juice, right? That was the fun part, to get up in front of groups. Now, I know a lot of people don't like to talk in front of groups, which is totally fine, but it's something that was the juice to me, still is the juice to me. And then I've had lots of practice and got lots of formal education on it, seminars and listened. So it's finding where your God-given talents are. I also look back, if you want to find where your talents are and what kind of field or what you should be doing. Do you know that box of crap that your mom finally gave you that was in your room that she finally boxed up after 5 years, and then they put it in the basement on the shelf? And then when you're like 30, mom and dad say, "Will you just take that freaking box?" You know, so you pull out that box and it's got ribbons and trophies and newspaper articles. Those things, that's a great way to find out where your talents are and what direction you should be going. So if you have music ribbons, or if you have athletic ribbons, or agriculture, whatever those trophies are, somehow in some way you should be able to work those into your career in some form or fashion. And that's a good way to, people ask me that a lot. How do I know what I should be doing? Like, look in that old box that your mom gave you from when you were a kid, and you start digging through it. Those were things that we did because we wanted to. Those were things that we did because we excelled at them. Those were things that we did because we liked to learn about them, and people taught us. You know, our teachers and coaches taught us about them. And so often we leave that box behind, you know, your drama box and theater, and we become a CPA because that's what my dad was. And I know if I get out of college, I can make $42,000 a year being a CPA. Nothing wrong with being a CPA, but if your box is full of, you know, drama, theater, art, and everything, try to combine that with your love of numbers or economy. Be a CPA, but combine those if you can, and that's where you'll find the magic.
Did you ever have? I mean, most people are not born loving to public speak. Like, is that something that you really did love it from the start, or is that something that kind of grew into a passion?
You know, it would be both, and that's a great question. So when I was a little kid, I was always giving presentations, and we were doing a lot of people can say, we did a play at Christmas and all the cousins did, and I was the leader. And I did all that, but I also had experiences along the way. Like, I think my first speech in high school, I couldn't even finish because it was so awkward and so nerve wracking. I couldn't even hardly talk. And, the kids in the front row start laughing and it just gets worse and worse. And so that could have been a moment maybe where I never would have got in front of a group again. But you overcome those and you keep working on them. And we know in high school, if you can't give it up and give some kind of speech, they're going to make you do it again the next day or next week. So you have to face those demons, if you will. And it's a little switch, I'll tell you. And I'll say this to a lot of people and your listeners. What are some of the symptoms if you get nervous before a speech? What are some of your symptoms? Austin, what would some symptoms be?
Sweating, a little shaky, crying, got to take a leak.
Yes, so those would be some symptoms. Now, think of before a big sporting event, before a football game or basketball game, or before you went something that you were excited. So think of being excited for something. What are the symptoms if you're excited for something?
All the same.
All the same. So it's like a little switch in your head. Am I nervous or am I excited? So when I got married, I had all of those symptoms. And you can call it being nervous or you can call it being excited. And it is it's a mindset, it's an attitude, what you have. And the people I find that can say, hey, this is exciting, I'm doing something worthwhile, that kind of lean into that, I still get those same symptoms. Now, I've learned how to control them better. They're not as big. Come into leading with power and there was 100 guys in the room. That's not the most people I've ever spoken to. If I've spoken to 5,000 people before, I know in the back of my head I can do this and I'm prepared. So that calms all those feelings. And I'm excited. And if I don't get that feeling, that's probably the time when I should quit doing what I'm doing. But I know people always ask me, Matt, when will you quit speaking? And I'm like, well, you just kind of know. I'll probably know when it's time to go. And then I'll speak for another 5 or 10 minutes. Because that's kind of seems how it works. But so when I coach people or when I talk to people about this, it's really just a switch of say, if I'm speaking in front of a group, they've brought me in. This is important. This is cool. And you get those feelings. You get those same feelings, but it's how you manage it and how you look at it in your head. And if I tell everyone, hey, I'm nervous, then people start looking at your hand shaking. They see your knees. They hear your voice crack. And it can build up and it can get worse and worse, like it did when I was a freshman. And the jerk guys at the front row started laughing and said, you can't even talk. And it gets worse and worse. But if you're excited and you have some of those same things, you're like, hey, that's cool. I get it. I'm speaking to a group of freshmen. I don't know any of them. And there's a really cute girl in the front and I'm really getting nervous. But if I said, hey, that's excitement, see how it changes that?
Yeah. What is it about public speaking that, like, I read a stat before this, and you probably know the stat more than I do, but like 75% of the population are deathly afraid of public speaking. Like, this specific thing, why is it so fearful for so many people? Like, this one specific thing, you can have a lot of those feelings before a football game, but yet I love to play football and go do those things. Or when I was in a band, playing in a band, but like stepping up in front of guys that are you're the only person talking. Why is it that, like, across the country, this specific thing is such a fear for so many people?
Yeah, I think there's a couple reasons. First of all, people are afraid. So we make it about us. So when I'm up in front of a group and it's about me, your mind can go into some dark places. And we had that old thing of saying, well, just pretend everyone in the audience is naked. You've heard that before. Pretend everyone's naked. Well, that's kind of funny. But when you're up on stage and it's about you and you think of them naked, then very quickly your mind will go to, well, are they thinking of me naked? And if you have that, and that's what our mind wants to do, is to take us down that path, and what society has said. So now all of a sudden I'm standing in front of a room and they're thinking of me naked, but that's when it's about me. If you can turn that into when I spoke to your group, Leading with Power, right? It's not about me. It's about the group. So those are some of the best speakers that I see, that they're not so concerned that maybe that their hair is perfect. I mean, we want to look good and that everything's set. But as soon as that comes on, as soon as we're on, it's really about the audience, or it's about God, or what we're trying to accomplish. But if it's about me, then it gets very easy to be scared to death of it, because it can be, if you speak to a room of 500 people and it's all about me, that's not going to go very well. But if you can turn it into about the group or about your audience, that's when the magic starts to happen. And you can get through that.
Yeah. So, do you have times where you can remember where did you ever struggle with that, of the going from the trying to like impress people, like yeah, again, almost showing off? It's about me. I want to show people how smart or how much I know. To then becoming more relaxed and being like, no, I'm going to provide value and speak on the things to bring them. Again, something of value, lift them up, encourage and motivate them. Did you ever experience that in your public speaking journey?
To where it was about me.
Yes,
Ask me that
or
again.
even like going to other people's things. Have you do you notice the way that the audience responds like immediately to somebody who you can tell it's like they're trying, it is about them. They're trying to impress, versus the speaker that's like, I'm just bringing good value. I don't care if you think I'm cool. I'm just trying to help you guys.
Yeah, and you can tell that right away from a speaker's introduction, Keegan. If you read a long introduction and it's about where I went to college and how many books I've written and all the letters and initials behind my name, very quickly that becomes about the speaker and how cool they are. You can notice a big difference. The other thing that we will use, that I love to use, is the I-U ratio. So it's about it's the I-U ratio. And so let's start the conversation this way. I want to tell you guys a quick story. It was about the time I rode my bike through the Colorado Rocky Mountains. I rode for 7 days in the Colorado Rocky Mountains. I would start out in the morning. I'd get up early and it would be freezing. And then I'd start climbing the mountain on my bike and going through all these switchbacks. And then the sun would come out and I'd start getting sunburned. And then I'd ride and I'd ride and I'd ride. And then I'd finally make it to the top of the mountain after 2 or 3 hours of riding. I'd finally make it. And it was so cool. And it was cold again at the top of the mountain. Was that story was okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good for you. Just kidding.
Okay. Now, I want you guys to imagine what it would be like if you rode your bike for a week through the Colorado Rocky Mountains. Can you imagine that? You'd get up early and you'd be with a bunch of people and we'd all start riding. And when you'd get up, you'd put on all these clothes because it was cold. You're at the base of the mountain and it's early in the morning. And then as you start riding up the switchbacks, you go through different seasons almost. Sometimes you'd have to bring sunscreen so you didn't get burned. Sometimes you'd ride on mud vests. I think you guys get the point, right? Did you see how it was about you? So that's the I-U ratio. So now sometimes you have to talk about yourself a little bit. You have to get credibility. We'll say Matt Booth has been professionally speaking for 25 years in all 50 states. I've worked all around the world except one continent. Okay, so sometimes you need that to get the credibility. But very quickly, you have to turn that into us and we and you. Imagine getting to the top of that mountain, guys, after spending like 7 hours in the rain and the sleet. If you did that, and I got up and I was freezing because it was so cold and there was like 6 feet of snow on the top of the mountain. And imagine if you looked over and here came a guy on a arm pedal bike because he didn't have any legs. You can feel the difference, I think.
Yeah.
So that's the I-U ratio. And very quickly, I can tell and you guys can tell, most audiences can tell too, but when I flip on the PowerPoint slide and I start talking about me, you guys, people in the audience, very quickly get bored and distracted. And what can we do when we're bored and distracted? Now, it's so easy.
Certainly. Let's talk a little bit more about the meat of what you share in your presentations and books. And one thing I love about what you've all said already is like back to the basics, the simple stuff, being consistent, being disciplined. We just got done with an episode an hour ago, and that was a dude that's super successful now. And that's a story. He said, nothing I'm going to share with you is crazy that are these exquisite strategies or like I made it overnight. It's simple things that I did over a period of time and had enough discipline to do it for a long enough period of time. And that's what I love about what you share. So tell us more about like what are those core messages that you talk about in your book and in your presentations.
Yeah, I've identified 5 key basics. Now, out of coincidence, guys, these are 5 interests that I have that I've been studying and talking about for 20 years. So the first one is your attitude. And I love to talk about attitude. Kind of my theory on that is no one can be positive 100% of the time. It's not possible. Bad stuff happens. And it's okay to have one of those days. But one of those days, if you don't check your attitude and think about it, one of those days quickly turns into 2 of those days, and 2 become 3. And we all know people who've had like 7 years in a row worth of one of those days. So I love to talk about attitude. I see you guys nodding your heads. You get it. What are some of your thoughts on attitude?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think one of the things I agree, we can't all be positive all the time. But in all the jobs that I've worked, I've always said, I joke that my spiritual gift is fun. I think you can take a mundane, boring thing and try to bring some energy and some life to it. And in the same way that negative attitudes are going to be infectious and cause everybody to go negative, I think positivity and bringing fun and energy to something, flipping burgers. Like I've worked at Culver's. Okay, you can make Culver's fun, make the drive-through fun. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't supposed to, but like a little bit of an accent, right? Like, but just little things that aren't like actually bad for the business, but that brings life to those around you. In the same way, if you're negative, you're going to be a black hole and an energy sucker to everybody. But I am not always positive, so maybe some of my friends are watching this and going, this guy's lying. But I do try to bring a good energy, a positive energy. No matter what, you're going to be doing what you're doing. Why not have fun and be positive while you're doing it? I think the analogy I learned in high school was you're either a bucket dipper or a bucket filler. Don't be a bucket dipper, dipping into everybody's bucket, being negative, stealing it from them. Be a bucket filler. Fill up people's buckets, and yeah, I think it's infectious. So that's my opinion on it.
I would say for me, yeah, I think the importance of having a consistent attitude and kind of as a leader to others of people know what they expect and that not always happy-go-lucky every single day, but not having big mood swings and always having a positive attitude and being consistent in who you are in that attitude, that's who you truly are, that you're not just putting on a facade in front of others, but being authentic in your attitude as well, but being consistent.
Yeah, one of the things that I do when I work with organizations or companies, it's that attitude piece. And just telling people that they don't, attitude speaker comes in and like everybody's butts pucker up already because they're like wondering what's going to happen. And when I talk, it's not about, sunshine and rainbows, because I live in the real world too. I cut my own grass and shovel my snow. And it's not about, when you tell someone, it's not about being positive all the time. I see so many people who just go, oh, Larry, I thought I had to be positive all the time. I'm not positive all the time, and this is what I do. And it's okay, like, to be upset. I fired myself 3 times last week. I got so mad. Now I get to hire myself back each time, but I did fire myself. And it's that awareness, which I think a lot of people are missing. So if you ask most people in our country and around the world, will your life be better if you're positive or if you're negative? If you're a half glass, half full kind of person or half empty? In our world now, we've read so much and we know so much about being positive that most people are going to say, yeah, be positive is better. Now you always have the people say, well, I'm a realist and I live in the real world. But most people will tell you the challenge is most people don't think about their attitude daily. People don't think about their attitude as much as they brush their teeth. A lot of people don't think about their attitude as often as they change the oil on their car. So this is about CYA, not cover your butt. Keegan, I know you were thinking that. It's called check your attitude. And if you check your attitude enough, you don't have to worry about covering your butt. So it's that awareness piece. And then if because if you're aware and you have a flat tire on the way to work and you get pissed off about it, and then you're aware that you were pissed off and you're like, that was kind of stupid. It's just a flat tire. We don't even change our own tire anymore. We call somebody, it comes and changes it for us. And what did it messed you up for an hour of inconvenience? Now, if you realize that and you were mad and you weren't being very positive, but you're aware of that, you can stop that at like an hour or two. But the three of us and people listening, know somebody who has a flat tire Monday morning. It not only ruins that whole day, it can ruin their whole week because they had a flat tire on Monday morning. So it's being aware of that. And then when you're aware of your attitude, what I tell people is to get some perspective, because you have to get perspective. People listening and us, we live in a great time in the world. We live in a great country. We live in a great place. And even anyone who's listening, if someone listens to this and they're in Dafka, Nigeria, which is a little village in Nigeria that I've been to, if they get the Wi-Fi, they're living in a pretty good time. If they could get to Wi-Fi and listen to this podcast, things are pretty good for them because they have a phone and they have electricity and they have a Wi-Fi. And so once you have that perspective of how good we have it, then that leads to gratitude. And that's that gratitude piece that gives you a good attitude, because you start being thankful for the things you have, not mad because of things you don't have. So that's a whole cycle, we could talk for 2 or 3 hour podcast just about that whole process if you wanted to.
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned there's 5 total. Attitude is the first one.
Attitude is the first one. The second one is engagement. This is how you communicate with people. That's very basic. That's when we talked, I think it's your program, about smiling and eye contact. Those are a couple pieces of basic communication that we've thrown out the window. We've forgotten. Bosses aren't teaching. Our parents aren't teaching it to us anymore. We're so distracted by everything. And there's so many computers and so much technology. We're forgetting those basics, smiling and eye contact. And all you have to do is drive somewhere for a day to go shopping, go to a fast food place, go to a restaurant, go to a hotel, and you'll see how quickly we've lost that if you think about it. So that's the engagement piece. That's the communication, number 2. Number 3 is our health. And there's tons and tons of information about health and diets and how much exercise. There's so many options. I mean, it's all the way from the Planet Fitness, $9.99 a month. So you can say you belong to a gym, but you never go to, all the way up to you could spend so much on your health. Most people I talk to are adults, and we're professional adults. And it's really amazing that people haven't figured out in 30 or 40 or 50 years what works with their body. If you want to do CrossFit, go freaking do CrossFit. If that works and helps you, if you want to run a marathon, run a marathon. If you want to ride a bike, ride a bike. If you just walk around the block 10 times and that fits your body and works for you, do that. We tend to give that so much away. We buy into so many gimmicks and so much stuff. It's really about activity, what you're putting in your body. If you can eat carbs, eat carbs. If you do better on meat and vegetables, eat meat. We should know this, but we don't. Like, we give all that responsibility to doctors and health field. And then a big thing is you have to get enough sleep. Tons of people aren't getting sleep, and we can have a whole podcast on that too. So attitude, how you communicate with people, your personal health. The 4th that I love to talk about is goal setting and accomplishment. and I hit on it a little bit earlier. For 10 years, I gave speeches for free. And then I had a mentor guy talk to me about goals. And he said, "Do you have any written goals on you?" And I said, I have lots of goals. They're in my head. He said, "You need to write them down." So when I was about 30, and I had done it a little bit before, but when I was about 30, I wrote down a list of goals. And so for the past 20 some years, I've been carrying around goals in my wallet. So there's three things that I think you need to do when it comes to goal setting and accomplishment. First, write them down. The second is review them monthly. And I'm only talking for maybe 5 or 10 minutes each month. And then the third is carry them with you. So I'll ask you guys, do you guys each have your goals on you?
They're in my office in the next room.
So you really don't have them on you?
I do not have them on me.
No.
They're on my phone. That's on me.
Okay, but you didn't know that the first time I asked you. So this is a funny thing. So if I'm in a room full of 100 people, if we'd have done this at Leading with Power, and I said, "How important is goal setting?" Everyone in that room would have said, "Oh, it's important." And I would have had them think of one thing they want to accomplish in the future. I would have had everybody stand up, and I would say, everyone standing has written down a goal sometime in their life. And I would have said, stay standing if you do it more than once a year, because many people just did it 3 weeks ago on New Year's Eve, New resolutions. I'd say stay standing if you do it more than once a year. About half of the room would have sat down at your group. And then I would have said, stay standing if you look at your goals once a month. Then out of 100 people, another half would have sat down. There'd have been about 20 of you standing. And I would have said, stay standing if you can show me your goals. And out of those 25 people, there'd have probably been one or two at your group that could show me their goals. A bunch of people would have said, they're in my office right next door, or I have them on my mirror at home. But that's a huge, and if we asked, probably out of that 100 group, there's probably 70 of them could have got to them on their phone, but they didn't realize it because they have them in a Word doc somewhere, and it's probably on their phone somewhere. But they didn't work it. They don't know it enough. They don't work it enough to have them. So it's really three simple things. Write them, review them once a month, and then carry them with you. There's something magical when you start carrying them with you.
I'd like to dig deeper into that one a little bit if we can. I've always been of the mindset that I used to just write down a bunch of goals, right? Of these are the things that I want to accomplish. And I forget the saying, but you overestimate what you can do in a month and underestimate what you can do in 10 years or something along those lines, right? Sure. But I just found that by writing so many and trying to cram so many into a period of time, or even like a year's or 3 years, you don't get the gratification of accomplishing them. And then they just keep getting put off. And then almost in your head, it's the expectation that, yeah, I have them and they're there, but I'm just going to keep adding to them anyways. So recently, within the past 3 years, followed more of the EOS model, if you're familiar with that, of establishing quarterly goals. And like I can focus on the next 3 months, and I can crush the next 3 months, and setting 1 to 3 goals. We just went through it with my assistant, of not having 5 or 10 different goals, 1 to 3 that I could tell you right now what they are, and they're done by when they're due, and looking at kind of a shorter period of time, still having the vision of where you want to go, but having the definitive goals for a 3-month time period and 1 to 3. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons that people don't do this, because it seems real simple, but it gets overwhelming real quick. And I tell you, again, it's like what we talked about just with eating and with exercise. You've been doing this for how long, Austin? Figure out what works for you. You should know. Some people, and I've done it both ways, you read a book and they're like, if you had more than 3 goals, you don't have any. It's kind of like what you said. And so I've gone from having 3 goals on my list that I carry around in my pocket to probably having 300 goals. But you've got to process that and figure that out. And this is the key. If you actually take a step and start doing it, you're going to figure out what works for you. Some people have pictures, like a dream map, because they're very visual. We'll use SMART goals. Sometimes it's good to have one goal as a vision for the year or one word. And then you have to kind of decipher, are they action steps? Are these small term goals? Are these long term goals? These financial goals? But the key is that can get so overwhelming, and you can get a big binder and CD-ROM, like apps and everything. And it's so overwhelming that you never do it. When really I'm just trying to make it very simple, basic, if you will. Write them down, review them once a month, and carry them with you. And then you will it's no different than trying being on the 60th episode of a podcast. If you'd only done 3 podcasts,
Yep.
right? So this is the same process, very basic, very primal. Just write them down, put them on your phone, whatever you need to do. And then as you keep working on them, you're going to figure it out. Oh, if I want a new car, I'm going to get a picture of that car and carry it with me. That will help some people. I'm not a real visual guy, so that's not going to help me. I would be more by numbers. So I got to make an extra 70 grand if I want to pay for the new truck that I'm getting. And I don't want a loan on it. So that might drive me, where Keegan might just be a picture of the truck, all jacked up or whatever, however you want it. And that might drive you to make that extra 70,000. He's probably thinking 70,000. That's not enough for my truck. It's going to be 95.
You should see that sweet minivan parked up.
Oh, you were good. My minivan about $3,000, and I love that thing. I'm like, hey, it drives me A to B. What? I don't care what it looks like.
I have a minivan too.
Oh, there you go. I could still out street race this guy, so that puppy hums.
So in the whole goal setting thing, that can be a whole day seminar again. But really, the value of that, people can write them down, review them monthly, and then carry them with them. They'll work it out over that process, over a couple months or over a couple years. They'll figure out, what, this is an action step. So some people need all the action steps. So if I say, Austin, your goal is to get your master's degree or make another degree. And I'd say, okay, write that down. Now, what are all the short-term goals to getting a degree at school? What would some of the short-term goals be?
You got to apply. You got to get approved. You got to take X amount of credits.
Yeah, have to have money. If you have kids, who's going to watch the kids on those 2 nights a week. Those are all action steps. Now, some people need to have each of those action steps, and they need to become a goal for them. So they want to say, okay, pick a college. There's 6 colleges. Am I going to go in person? Is it going to be online? Some people, the way their brains work, need to have each one of those and tick that box off. Some people, like myself, I would just get my freaking degree. And when I'm looking at it, that I work that out. I'm like, shoot, I'm pulling over. I'm stopping at that college. But some people so everyone's really different on that. But once you start doing it, like anything, whether it's your health or a podcast or giving speeches, once you get to that certain number, you're like, okay, this system works for me.
Mm-hmm. Were there any pivotal moments in your life that helped you learn these? Because now you're teaching these 5 things. So for your life, like, how did you come across this? Did you learn this from like a mentor or somebody else? Or how did you figure these things out for your own life?
Yeah. And everything I think that we've learned or that we've got comes from our past, So was there a good coach in my life that really spurred me to do this? We spend a ton of time with our parents, good things that they taught us and not so good things we want to end and don't want to pass on to our kids. There's all sorts of moments we could get really into particulars. I'd probably have hundreds of stories about different times that have helped me. But I really think it's that something that my dad always says is he would say, and this is where so many people stop these days, is because there's so much information, so many self-help books, there's so many different things we could change, but it's taking that action and trying something. Like we had talked about before, we're just going to try a podcast. And we're going to commit to it. We're going to see what happens. We're going to learn as we go. Each time, I'm guessing in each one of your podcasts, you learn something a little bit different and you tweak it so the next one's bigger. This is the same way. So my dad used to say, take action. And he said it a little bit different because he'd swear sometimes, but he'd say, do something. Freaking do something. Right or wrong, I don't give a crap, but do something. So when you're faced with an obstacle or you feel overwhelmed and we have so many choices of stuff, which diet are we going to take or which school are we going to go to? Are we going to attend Planet Fitness or go to one of the other 47 options for a gym? We can't even freaking pick a movie on Netflix. It takes you like an hour to freaking pick a movie, a 45-minute show on Netflix, and it takes an hour to school. So my dad would say, freaking do something, right or wrong, just do something because you do something and that creates progress or forward movement. If you're not doing the right thing, you find out pretty quick, and when you come to the fork in the road, take one because just down the road a little ways, there's another freaking fork in the road. You've got to keep making progress. Same old thing is, if you fall down, get up because when you get up, you're like 2 steps further down the line than you were the next time. So there's lots of little moments like that. And I'd say, take that action. And I can be guilty of that just like the next person. You have a great idea. You're working on something because right now I'm exploring starting an online community. And there's so many options, so many different platforms. What am I going to call it? What are we going to talk about? Who is the target market? But I've been working and thinking about this for 2 or 3 months now. So when am I going to frickin' just jump, right? When am I going to do it? It's not going to be perfect. This is probably my beta community. It's going to look way different in 5 years than it does next month. But when am I going to take action? And I hear this little voice saying, frickin' do something, even if it's wrong. What if I get the wrong name? Who gives a crap? Do it. And so it's those moments of just finally saying, just take some action, right or wrong, do something.
Yeah. That can be applied to anything. I think that's a big differentiator. I was actually asked, I was thinking about this when we were talking about people sitting down with their goals. I was asked in an interview for a podcast a couple weeks ago about like, what would you do to set yourself apart from others in your industry? And starting out in real estate, there's 500 realtors in the La Crosse area and 5,000 in the Milwaukee area and just any industry, right? And I think he was expecting me to say, well, I would do this marketing strategy or that marketing strategy or do this branding to separate yourself from others or this campaign or be out something outside of the box, right? And my answer was not that at all. And it was just pursue excellence in what you're doing and do the little things right. And that is a prime example of a group of 100 guys that are all guys that are going to lead with power, care about becoming better men. That's why they're there, right? You're not talking about people who are just getting by for the most part. These are even a group of people that want to be better men, want to grow, right? And a group like that of that many people, of 100 guys getting down to, in your experience, 2 or 3 that actually have their goals written down. We'll talk about separating yourself from others in any industry that you're in. If you can eat clean and work out 3 to 5 times a week, if you can write down your goals and stick to them, if you can treat your customer right and try to treat them better every interaction you have with them, like those little the world is full of average people doing average things, just getting by, and that's in any industry and so many businesses that operate that way. I think to separate yourself, that's why I love what you preach and everything we're talking about here, is because that literally is the secret sauce. That is the difference maker.
So Austin, I don't know if we talked about this, but I have my real estate license for 20 years.
I did not know that.
And I used to write down on my goals, I'd have real estate minded goals. Sell this many houses. In order to sell this many houses, you had to show this many houses, and you have to find buyers and sellers, and so you have to prospect. So I would go in, and it would be between me and 3 other real estate agents to list their house, and they would say, "Why, Matt, it's really close." Like you said, they can throw a rock out of their front window and hit like 12 real estate agents, and they'd say, "Why should we list with you?" And what I would do, one of the things I would do, if it was right, I didn't do it every time, but I'd say, you know what? I have a list of goals that I carry around in my pocket, and it says I need to list a house per week. And I need to, more importantly for you, that means I need to sell 1 per week. And I want yours to, and I pull out my list of goals and show them where it said I need to sell one house per week. And I would really love one of those weeks to be yours in the next month. How many other agents do you think
Zero.
poke goals out of your pocket?
Yep. Yeah. I think
And that's pretty powerful,
Yeah.
like you said.
it is. It's the little things that are the difference makers, and I think it all comes down to pursuing excellence in what you're doing, and wanting to be the best at what you're doing. But that comes from the basic fundamental stuff, and that's been a consistency amongst probably every guest that we've interviewed on the show.
Yeah. And the fifth basic that I identified in my book is source of power. So I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus has saved me and is working on me and in me. I'm not saying that's what everybody has to do, but I do believe that you need to have a source of power bigger than yourself. You need to believe in something bigger than yourself. That helps you get through the hard times, helps you stay humble in the good times, helps you love other people and serve other people. And I don't know if we talked about this, but the Pew Research study that I just read said 9 out of 10 Americans believe in a higher power. To 9 out of 10 Americans. About half of them believe in some form of a God. The other half believe in the environment or the galaxy or science or something. But it says 9 out of 10 people in our country believe in a higher power. So in every major form of religion, they have a form of the golden rule. The golden rule, of course, is do unto others
As you want done to yourself.
right. And so, and even if you believe in nature, and let's say you hug in trees and you love trees, if you believe that in some form or fashion, do you understand the golden rule? If I take care of this tree that I'm hugging, this tree will what? Take care of me. It will provide shelter. It will provide heat. It will provide fruit. It will take care of me. So 9 out of 10 people in our country believe in a higher power, which tells me they know the golden rule. There is no way that 9 out of 10 people in our country are practicing some form of the golden rule. So there's a huge difference between knowing something and doing something. And that goes right back to taking freaking action, right or wrong, do something. So that's the fifth basic, is having a source of power. And I really believe people need to have something and be connected to it. So if you tell 9 out of 10 people, if you ask them, yeah, I believe in God, but I don't go to church or anything. Okay, well, that's cool. And you can believe in God and you can find God in a tree stand, because I've done it. And going on a hike, you can find God out there. But we're really meant to live in community and connection with others, which reminds us that we need to practice the golden rule. We need to not just know Jesus, but do Jesus. Not just know about him, but actually do things that he would do. And there's a huge difference, a big gap between knowing something and doing something. So that would be my fifth basic. They're not in any particular order of importance, because I would probably say, if you asked me, that would be the most important.
Certainly. And I think in regards to Jesus and the Bible and his word, like, what's in the Bible is a command to us. It's not a suggestion. It's not just a self-help book, right? I think too many people look at it as it's just, yeah, you can follow the life of Jesus. Jesus was a great person, and if you do what he does, you're going to live a good life. Well, yeah, that's one part of it, but Jesus is your Savior, and he is commanding you to do those things. So I think as Christians, that's that part of it. As far as taking action, it's not a suggestion. It is a command. This is what we need to do.
Yeah, and I would argue
And
too.
to take that action, you
go ahead.
got to get in the playbook. Sorry,
You go ahead.
Yeah, we got to get in the playbook. If we all signed up for a football team, one of the first things the coach would do would give us a playbook. We have to study the playbook, and then we have to practice it, so that when the big day comes and the game comes, we can go play and we know the plays. The Bible is the freaking playbook. Yeah. It's his word. It's God. So you got to get in it. You got to read it, and then you practice it. You practice it with people you're in community with, whether it's a small group or your family or your church members. You practice it so that when you're leaving church and somebody rear ends you with their car, you don't get out and start swearing at them when the big game comes. because you've read the playbook. You practice with your family. You practice with your church community or the community that you're with. And it's not a suggestion. That's because you got to get in and you got to know Jesus. And if you know him, know him, know him. But then you got to start doing him and working him and trying to do what he would do. And that's how when the big game comes, or many big games, or many interactions, you can be more like Jesus. You know, he's the living word. And he came down and he grabbed 12 dudes like us to show them how to live that word, not just know it, but to live it. You know, and he didn't get 12, it's not like 12 superstars. He didn't look around and get like the 12 coolest dudes. You know, he just picked normal people like us and it's like, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do this. And I think that's fascinating. I love that. And we have to go from just, you know, like knowing about him to really doing it.
Yeah, and then my add-on to both those would be you can't do it without him. So to those who are like, well, yeah, I agree, he's a good teacher and we should follow his principles. My argument would be you can't follow his principles because he tells us, I need him in my life and I need the power of the Holy Spirit to do what he does. I cannot do it. You can't be good enough, but you really can't live that way. I can't have power without plugging it into electricity. I cannot live the life God has called me to, which is also the beauty of God. He didn't leave us alone to live this life without him and to do what he commands without him. He goes, I'll actually help you too. I came down, you put your faith and you give your life to me. I will send you the Holy Spirit to help you do what I've called you to do. So that'd be my little tidbit I'd add on there.
Yeah, we're just ordinary dudes. It's like getting 6 buckets full of water, right? At the marriage, the first miracle Jesus performed. They're out of wine. He said, go get 6 containers of wine, fill it to the brim, fill them with water, you know? And water is nothing. It doesn't taste like there's nothing. He didn't say, give me 6 containers of grapes. Because like that, you could figure it out. You know, he turned it into grape juice. He added water and smashed them quick. That's not what happened. He brought a vessel, 6 vessels full of empty, like just out. That's what we are. And then when you add God into the mix, it becomes something extraordinary. He can take just water. He can take us, who are just normal dudes. And when you add him and when he works on it, we can turn into some of the best and most expensive wine ever, or the best version of ourselves for his kingdom ever. But if you can't skip the part that he adds, because we're just nothing. We're nothing. And we're filled to the brim with nothing sometimes. And he's got to pour that out and it becomes something so valuable, but you have to have that piece in there.
Absolutely. Matt, maybe to end us off here, for people who maybe get overwhelmed with all of the self-help and the personal development and Jesus and all this stuff, what are some, but they do want to make a change in their life. What is your advice to those people?
Yeah, and we'll keep it real basic, right? So the first thing that you have to do is you have to think about your attitude. Check your attitude. When things get down, you have to be like, hey, are things really that bad? I can control it. Something you can control is your attitude. Doesn't mean you have to be skipping around the house and singing crazy songs and riding unicorns and things like that, but you control your attitude. And then you got to figure out what's going on in your life. Where can you, if you want to make big changes, what's the biggest thing that you can do in 2025 that will help your life, help you along? Is it get a hold of your diet? Is it to start to do some activity somehow? Is it mending broken relationships that you have? Pick something big, or write down 3 or 4 or 5 things that really maybe suck in your life right now. Maybe you drink too much. Maybe you eat too much. Maybe your business sucks. Maybe you don't like your job. But write down 3 or 4 or 5 things and then just pick one and say, okay, if I change my relationship with alcohol in 2025, if I change that relationship, what does my life look like going forward? I'm not saying you have to quit drinking if you don't want to, but if I have a bad relationship with food, if I change that in 2025, what does my life look like? If I have a bad relationship with a spouse or with a kid or with my parents, what if I change that? What if I do something to fix that this year in the next couple months? What if I try to attack that and change that? And then, if you're hearing this message, it's like my dad said, you got to freaking do something. It's nice to get a message and you know it and you hear it. And you're like, oh, great. The Pay It Forward podcast, that was warm and fuzzy and got 50 million views on the platforms. But what is if 50 million views, does that translate into anybody doing something? You got to change. You got to do something, right or wrong, try to change it. So if I have a bad relationship with my mom or my dad, call. I'm not sure that's the right thing to do, to call them, but right or wrong, you'll find out real quick and say, hey, Dad, I want to take you to lunch. Let's go to lunch. I don't know if that's the right action, but I know doing nothing will never fix your relationship with your dad. If you have a bad relationship with alcohol, like I did for about 30 years, change it. Quit drinking for a week. See if you can do it. Stop drinking for a week. If you get to a week, go for 30 days. And I'll tell you, when you get to 90 days, you start seeing the benefits so much, you'll probably never go back to the way you were. And I'm not saying you have to quit drinking, but change that relationship and see what happens. And so commit right now to changing something in 2025. And more importantly, probably the next 30 days. Because if you don't change it in the next 30 days, you're not going to change it 2025. We just, last Friday was National Quitters Day. Did you guys know that?
I did. I saw that.
You saw that too. I've been talking about that for years.
I celebrated
it's always
it.
the second Friday.
I was celebrating it. Yep, I was with them.
Yeah. It's like 85% of all New Year's resolutions end by the second Friday in January.
Yeah. Crazy.
So do something, commit to something. Don't try to do like 100 things in the next month. Just pick one, because our willpower is limited. We only have so much willpower to do something like that. So that would be my challenge. If you commit to something, you're listening to this podcast, you commit to something, I want you to send me an email. It's just matt@mattbooth.com and put in the subject line, Pay It Forward. And then I'll send you an audio version of my book.
Awesome.
Ooh, look at that. That's a good plug.
Attach it.
I said, that's a good plug. There it is.
I'll just say, send me an email. It's matt@mattbooth.com. Put Pay It Forward in the podcast, and I'll send you an audio version of the book that I recorded. Super cool. It was fun to do that.
Awesome.
So,
And if they want to go to learn more about booking you for a speaking event or to purchase your book, where can they go to find out more about you, Matt?
it's just mattbooth.com.
Awesome.
There it is. Yeah, we'll be sure to include a link to your book below as well. So any of our listeners are interested, just scroll below. They should be able to find it.
Thanks for being with us, Matt.
Awesome, guys. Let's do it again in 2026.
Awesome. That'd be great.
Perfect. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the Pay It Forward podcast. If you want to find out more about how you can support the podcast or become a sponsor, please click the link below or visit our website, payitforwardpodcast.com. Again, thank you so much for your support, and we hope that you can find a way this week to pay it forward.